ask you all to please turn off your microphones and cameras. And before we begin, I will ask Councillor John Mackay to lead us in prayer. Thank you, John.
Gracious and ever blessed Lord, we thank thee that we can call upon thy name on this morning anew, that we are found on mercy's ground, and that we can come into the presence of the most holy God, the God who created all things and the God with whom we have to do. We thank thee, Lord, for the way of salvation in the one on thy right hand, the Lord Jesus Christ, who died on the cross of Calvary for sinners such as we are. He is the way, the truth, and the life. And when we are found here, Lord, on this day, we pray for thy guidance and thy wisdom, because thou art the only true and wise God. And we pray unto thee, Lord, that thou would give us an understanding heart, and that we would look to thee, and that thou would create a clean heart within us and a right spirit, so that we would worship thee in spirit and in truth. We pray, Lord, for this committee. We pray for the chair, the vice chair, and all the officers involved. And we pray for them, Lord, that thou would be with them. And we pray for all our councillors, that thou would be with them, Lord, and that thou would guide them in all their different spheres and all the different problems that they may come across. We thank thee that thou knowest all things. We pray for our leaders in London and in Edinburgh, that thou would be with them, Lord, that thou would guide them, and that they would look to thyself as the only true and living God. Help us now, Lord, and give us to look unto thee and to pray for all those who are unwell at this time and those who mourn amongst us in these islands. We commit all to the care of the God who cares, the one who created us and the one with whom we have to do. Pardon us, Lord, from our many sins and cleanse us in the blood of Jesus. For Jesus' sake, amen.
Thank you, John. And I remind everybody that the meeting is now being recorded. In regard to the conduct of the meeting, a reminder of the following points. Please ensure your camera and microphone are off. This assists with broadband connectivity and also prevents background noise. I will call on the relevant officer to present their report. If a member or officer wishes to ask a question or raise a point, please do so using the raise your hand function on your device. I will invite each member in the queue to speak, and at that point, please switch your mic and camera on. After you have spoken, please ensure that you lower your hand and put your mic and camera off. Your device should be positioned so that your image is clear to the other participants, and please speak clearly and concisely directly at the camera. When calling for agreement of the recommendations at each item, a no show of raised hands will be taken as indication of the committee's approval. In regard to declarations of interest, members are reminded of the protocol. You must leave the virtual meeting by ending the call, which will be confirmed by the moderator to the chair. And following consideration of the item, you will be invited back into the meeting by the moderator. Please ensure you remain present to accept the invite to rejoin. Item 19 is an urgent item and will also be taken in private after items 16 and 17 at the end of the meeting. Prior to moving into private, participants other than the relevant officer and members of the committee will be asked to leave the virtual meeting. If necessary, there will be a short recess to allow for this process and to resume with the private item. Finally, a reminder that the meeting is being live streamed and recorded. The recording will be made available on the Comhairle's website following the meeting. Now, if we can move on to the agenda proper. Item 1 is minute of meeting of 27th January 2021, which is for approval. Councillor Ian McCauley, you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. There's nothing on section 4 regarding a safe place to reflect the fact that we asked to see the original letters of objections from the complainers. That's not in the minutes.
Okay, who's Mayushin Callum? Who's going to respond to that?
It's not in the actual minute, no, but you have had dealings with their legal section in regard to that.
That's correct. I haven't personally had dealings with the legal section, but you are correct. It's 2 months later, and we still haven't received these letters. But I think it should be reflected in the minutes that we asked for it, and it should also be reflected at the moment that we're still waiting for it, please.
You were passed some information on from myself via Callum Mackenzie in the legal section. So you wish to note that in the minute. Also, I don't know if Tim is available.
Yeah, that's correct.
Sorry, Ian. Myself and Callum have had some discussion around this, so maybe Callum could comment on our discussion and what we would want to see moving ahead on this particular issue, which I sympathise with Councillor Macaulay, Councillor Murray and others who have raised this. Callum.
Yes, I'm happy to, Chair. Yes, the question was asked at committee if these details could be released. I did say at committee last time round that I'll have to seek advice as to whether we could release that information. So we did receive legal advice based on GDPR, which we then passed on to all members of the committee through the clerk. And that was that in terms of that information, it would not be lawful to provide personal details of the people that responded to the consultation. Should you wish that information to be made available in the future, then that would be the subject of a COLA report looking at the implications and the other relevant matters associated with collecting personal details and releasing that into the public sphere. So that's where we are just now with it. I don't know if there's any further clarification required.
Well, yes, I think there should be, because a further request was then asked to see that legal advice, which has been ignored. We haven't received that yet.
So I did respond to that, saying that the information that was put out was the legal advice. And the only thing that we could add to that was that it was in terms of GDPR that advice came to us.
Sorry, but so you've sent the legal advice that you got to the councillors? Sorry, well, I never got a copy.
Sorry, well, that legal advice was that it was unlawful to release the information in relation to a safe place because we haven't had the prior approval of the people that provided the information.
Oh, I thought there would be a bit more substance in that. My apologies, Callum. I thought there would be some legal grounding, some legal backing towards just that you were given advice. Was there no reasoning? No, I mean, I know this happens at another council. I know it happens in the Planning Applications Board. So that's why we really wanted to get to the bottom of why, in this case, it's not legal, whilst in other committees and other councils, it is legal.
And I think that's why it should form the basis of a report to a future committee to spell out these questions that you're asking for, and to take in all the aspects that should be considered when we're collating personal information.
Right. Can I let the Chief Executive in at this point?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just on the general policy issue, I don't think that there probably isn't any further legal advice to be given, because we cannot release personal details without consent unless we have made that clear to those individuals at the time they make their submissions or representations that their personal details will be distributed. I think it's right, if the committee wishes, that it consider the position for future cases, but there's a number of policy issues there as well, in that some people may not then be willing to make representations if their personal details are going to be passed to all members or are made publicly available. And
I don't think they should be public available. It's not at all what I mentioned. I think these letters have been written to the councillors.
If I can finish, please. That members will have to weigh up whether that will affect the number the number of representations, because that is a possibility. It may or it may not, but the committee should consider that. But it's also the public may also want to know why members want to know personal.
Because it doesn't make a decision.
Ian, can we let the Chief Executive finish, please? I'll let you in after him, please.
But the argument could equally be that as long as members are advised that representations come from residents of a safe place, for example, that is all the information that needs to be known. It's not a hard and fast one. It's a matter of policy, but it's right that members debate it through a report just so they can weigh these issues up. Right,
Ian, you have the floor.
Well, that is news to me at the moment, that the fact that all these complaints came from residents in a safe place. We weren't even told that to begin with. But I would assume that these, as like the Planning Applications Board, these people that are making the objections to the councillors, not the council. And I think it's only right that we get to see the letters that they have written us, because we are the ones that are determining the policy here. And why it can happen in one committee and other councillors and other councils are not with us is beyond me, to be honest.
Right.
And I think beyond a few. Well,
Chief Executive.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, 2 points there. I've no idea where the objections came from. I was using that purely as an example. And Councillor Macaulay is correct. The council should debate whether or not it wishes applicants' personal details to be revealed, and we have to make that clear to those who are making representations before they make them. And if we want to change our policy on that, I've no doubt we're quite free to do that. But you have to weigh up the potential effect on the number of representations. And finally, representations are not made to councillors. We must be clear about that. They are made to Corrin and Eilean, not to individual members or groups of members.
Okay, thank you, Malcolm. I'll let Norman in. You've been waiting a while. Norman MacDonald.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm not a member of your committee, but I don't see the merit in finding out the particular individuals' names involved in going forward with this. Fair enough, if we can deal with the complainants, I'm sure the information can be passed out without their names and addresses being given out. I visited one of the complainants and I sat with him, and his complaint was not only to councillors but to the council itself. And I see where the Chief Executive is coming from. It may well detract from folks' predilection to complain to the Comhairle. I've had every single committee meeting relevant to their complaint. Their names and addresses are going to be discussed. In a planning application, I think it's legal that you have to put your name and address forward. But in something such as this, what is the relevance of finding out in this particular case the name and address if we have a complaint? We have the complaint. We can look at the complaint, and they did come from bona fide addresses within the region that was the area that was being discussed. I don't see the point in finding out the names and addresses of the people concerned.
Sorry, Gordon Murray next.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. I kind of find this a bit outrageous, to be honest, and it sets a bad precedent. I think we are councillors, and we are bound by the Councillor Code of Conduct. So if any information is exempt or not to be made public, it's very clear to us that's made clear to us, and reports have come to us that are exempt, so that we cannot share. And if we do, we will be reported straight away to the Standards Commission, and quite rightly so. I think this is setting a very bad precedent, and we are Comhairle and Eilean here, are we not? The other thing is, I think this has gone through the courts already. There is a case that members might want to look at, R versus, I think it's Birmingham District Council, that went to the House of Lords regarding the councillors need to know. And yes, we do know. We need to know the objectors' names and addresses. If we get 150 people objecting from London and 2 people, how surely they should be waiting on the people who are living around the area. We need to know these. We're bound by these, and I think it's outrageous, and it's setting a very bad precedent about withholding information from decision makers. Thanks.
Right, Gordon, that's very strong words there, outrageous. I'll let Chief Executive in before Councillor Manford, if you'll excuse me.
I don't think it's at all outrageous, Chair, that we follow the practice which this council and elected members have put in place as a procedure in these matters. As I've said, it's absolutely up to elected members whether to require the consent of those who are making representations in this kind of matter. It's up to yourselves, but it can't be done retrospectively. But the policy can easily be changed by way of a report if that is what members wish. We are all Cornyn and Eilean Siar in legal terms. The organisation, the elected members, those who have powers under the scheme of delegation and the scheme of administration. It's the council as a collective entity, which is the legal body here. It's not differentiated among its various parts. But I think if the issue is deemed important enough, and I sense that it is, then we would be happy to provide a report for future cases. But Councillor Murray is right in the sense of it is important to know where representations come from, and of course we've done that in planning applications. I think in Spaceport, for example, it was very clearly noted how many representations came from North Uist, how many from the rest of Uist, how many from the Western Isles, how many from Scotland, UK, etc., etc. And that is, of course, absolutely relevant. But what we can't do in this particular case, where we've not asked for people's consent that their names and addresses be published, we can't publish them. It's not about members, it's about publishing them on the agenda.
Wait, no one's asking that.
Sorry, can I let Councillor Manford in? He's been waiting a while. Donald.
Thank you, Chair. I very firmly agree with with Ian and Gordon here. If this came through that the policy was changed to keep information away from members, information that is necessary to take decisions. You can choose to use it or discard it, but the information needs to be there for the decision makers to make assessments. Not if somebody else out with is deciding what information should be available and what isn't, then they are party to the decision making, not the ones supposedly left to take the decision. I strongly oppose this position. I understood the policy was very clear that the anybody making a legitimate complaint needed to have their name to it and wasn't anonymous. It's clear in this discussion itself that some people know and some people don't know. Now, going back to the GDPR, we were given information on advice. If the legislation is so cut and dried, let us see this legislation. Let us see it and decide what that legislation is for ourselves. We can take a legal opinion, but surely we've got the knowledge to read a piece of legislation and inform ourselves. So that does need to be put around, and we do need to know. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Councillor Manford. Chief Executive, you're muted.
Thanks, Chair. The legislation is publicly available for everyone to read, as is the guidance, as are the rules under which we operate. The point here, I think, and Mr. Langley can correct me if I'm wrong, is the retroactivity of it. I think we have not asked for the consent of these individuals for their names and addresses to be revealed, to be publicly available. There's nothing sinister about it. The Corla can change that point of view at its next meeting, but it should look at the matter through a report.
Right, I've got Councillor Norman MacDonald again. I'm going to take you in order now.
Yeah, thanks again, Chair. Again, I'm not a member of your committee, not even on Skidoo. I'm not for anonymous complaints out with an area coming in. We need to be certain that the folk who are complaining are relevant and pertinent to the area that's the subject matter we're talking about. But in this particular instance, as has been pointed out, we have the information, we have the complainant, we have verified that they are complaining from within the area we're talking about. You know, so I mean, to what end is it pertinent for their names and addresses to be released, and what's the validity of their names and addresses being released in a complaint about a safe place on parking? We know they're from the area. I mean, is it necessary? I'm sure Ian can find out if he would like to find out who the complainants are. And yes, I agree with Gordon from what he cited there in the cases. It's important that complainants make themselves known by revealing their names and addresses and their locations before. And it's important that we take cognizance of the fact of how pertinent they are to within our own area. I mean, you could be bombarded with complainants from RSPB, etc. when it comes to the likes of the US rocket range, etc. You could get 20,000 people from London objecting to it. You know, so these things have to be based on the merits and the relevance, obviously. You know, and as Malcolm has pointed out, these people have not consented to their public information being given out with. So if we change the policy on that, then that's a matter for policy. But at the moment, I don't see the particular relevance of their names being available at our committee. You know, they've objected. They're bona fide objectors, and if we need to find out more, we can.
Right. Can I have Charlie Nicholson next?
Thank you, Chair. And listening to the discussion, I'm a wee bit confused on the basis of members are asking for information to make decisions, and members should be getting information. So I'm not into the name and address thing, but I take on board that they should, if they are putting in from the island, be part of that equation. So how come, Chair, then, when we come to something like education and the closure of schools, that we get copies of all the letters with the names and address of those that are trying to save their schools. Yet on another committee, when it comes before it, as such, members are asking for the information to make the decision in regards to the agenda item. From my perspective, and I'm not a member of your committee, I would wish to know that information. For me, anyway, Chair, the name and address, as long as they're from the area as such, the major bit for me is to have the information to understand what the residents are saying and why they're objecting in regards to that. And within that equation, you take it board as a member to make the decision at committee. So I would be backing Councillor Macaulay and Councillor Murray and others in receiving that information by members of this committee so they can make the decisions very transparently, because no one knows what these members have put in the letters there. All we got is objections. Why have they objected? What's the information there? And as members, we need to have that before us to make the final decision. So that's my point of information, Chair, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Murray, you're next on my list, followed by Councillor Macaulay.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. Probably my last point. You'll be glad to know, but it's just going in circles. We're not members of the public per se. We're the council. So if these things are sent to the council and we're the decision makers, then we should have a right to see it. If there's sensitivity about sending in a report, why don't you do what you did with Iceland, and we can have members coming in and looking at a sheet? But it's helpful so we know who and where the objectors are from, so we can give them a weighting. You wouldn't like it, Chair, if something was going to happen in your area and you had 100 objectors and you didn't know where they were from. That would be very frustrating, or who they were. Thanks.
We're on the same page with this one, Gordon. Don't worry about it.
You're the Chair.
Councillor Macaulay.
Thank you for allowing me to come back in again, Chair. Malcolm stated twice there that these names and addresses without their permission should not be given to the public. I am 100% in agreement. Nobody is asking for these names and addresses to be sent or given to the public or to be put in minutes. Nobody is asking that. We are part of the council. We are asking for that. That's my...
Okay, Councillor McCauley. Is that a legacy hand, Councillor Norman MacDonald, or do you want back in again?
Sorry, it's a legacy, and I agree. Yeah, that information should be fine for the councillors, but I have no issue with that at all. So
okay, can I have Councillor Ian M. MacLeod now?
Thank you, Chair, for letting me into this interesting debate. For the purpose of this debate, I would have thought that the release of postcode would be more than enough to help make decisions, if you like, without giving the actual personal details. But from my understanding of the GDPR, and maybe the legal eagles there can correct me, that data sharing within an organisation is not covered by the code. So if we're Comhairle, the Comhairle can share with us that kind of data anywhere within the code. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor MacLeod. I have Councillor Ray Mackenzie next on the list.
Thanks, Chairman. I don't think this is a trivial matter, and that's obviously what's concerning councillors. It's not a matter of publicising names. I gather that, if I remember back to the earlier debate, there were 7 objections. Now, I might be wrong there, but which isn't a great number. Are all these objectors from a safe place? I mean, surely we can be told the minimum of information. And I think also, I certainly agree with what's been said by Councillor McCauley and others, that we should, as councillors, be aware of who the objectors are and where they come from. And as has been said in the past, we do find that out in other circumstances, whether the sex education matter or other education matters, or the rocket range in used or whatever. So this isn't a trivial thing because there's only 7 objectors. I don't see what the difference is here when we are entitled to at least know where they come from. They could be coming from Timbuktu, as far as I'm concerned. And what right is somebody in Timbuktu to talk about a safe place? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mackenzie. I have Councillor Kenny John MacLeod, and maybe then I can ask the Chief Executive to come in and we'll see what he's advising us at this point. Kenny John.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for letting me in. I mean, this is beyond assay place and who it is that's made representation. It's about respecting the privacy of individuals, and the regulations have been made to protect individuals from misuse of information. Now, Councillor MacDonald, he suggested, and Councillor MacLeod even suggested, if members are aware of the postcode or if they're generally within the assay place area for their objections. I think the veracity of what they say, officers have a duty to check up on. But where somebody lives, I don't think it's necessary to know their actual address and their name. So long as we know where they come from, that they have got a legitimate right to make representation. And I do have concerns if their names and addresses are made more known, that it might detract from people making representation in the future. And to be quite blunt, I mean, if it's within across all the members, with all respect to them, it's as watertight as a sieve where that information goes. I don't think it's necessary for us to fulfil our democratic duty to know the individual address. It is necessary to know, in general terms, where they come from and the truthfulness of the representation they're making. So I would proceed with caution about just a wholesale releasing of names and addresses unless it is absolutely necessary, because there could be sensitive information that people make known to the council, and it wouldn't be appropriate for a general policy to be releasing names beyond any extent necessary. So I would urge caution with just a wholesale opening up of this. Thank you.
Okay, Kenny John, Chief Executive, can you maybe draw this to some kind of, I think it's been made quite clear what members' views are on this now.
Yes, thanks, Chair. As I would have expected, members' views vary from the current position to maximum disclosure, as it were, and I think that illustrates, hopefully, the reasons behind my own recommendation that you consider this by way of a report. There are three relevant considerations. One is maximum transparency. One is seeking out representations, genuine representations from members of the public, and ensuring that these can be given in a way members of the public are most comfortable with. Councillor Mackenzie is absolutely correct. It is entirely relevant where representations come from, and that's something that we've addressed in other reports in other situations. I gave the example of the spaceport. For example, in relation to a road traffic order, I think it's entirely relevant whether the representation comes from someone who is directly affected, who is indirectly affected, who lives in the vicinity but not the street that's affected. All of these things are relevant. Or we can just say to those making representations, your name and address will be made available either in public or in private. But probably the procedures, and these are Scottish Government procedures, I may add, were written before GDPR and all its various implications were considered. So I think it is, my recommendation to you is that you seek a report at the next series, and I will ask colleagues also to report on similar situations, for example, under the Civic Government Act, where councillors are asked to consider personal representations from individuals. I think that's the best way forward, and that would reflect the variety of opinions just given at this meeting. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much for that, Chief Executive, and I would agree with that. I'm seeing a number of hands still up. Councillor Manford, do you want to come back in?
Yes, thanks, I do. It's become clear in this debate itself that some members have information and some don't. If there are members around the table taking decisions, are we going to know who has more information than others? Is that going to be made clear? Because if it isn't, then everybody doesn't have the same information to work from. That's just the way it is. The watertight as a sieve, the information privately to members. How many times, what's the record in this council of people being not just referred to the Standards Commission, but found guilty in the Standards Commission of abusing that trust? Because if there isn't any, then that's not information that should be used here, because it's wrong. So this needs to be clear. I know it's not trivial. It's very, very serious. The decisions that members need to be taken on information they assess is relevant, not what somebody else believes is relevant. Some other members believe that some other members should have and some shouldn't. That is not right, and it's not fair. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Manford. Do you want to come back in, Councillor Macaulay, seeing you started the whole debate?
Thanks, Chair. I may as well, since you've invited me.
Can you finish by agreeing with the Chief Executive, though?
Unfortunately not. Nobody has still answered the question that why is it available to some committees, some schools, education, and not others. This is not for public exposure. This is for us to help us councillors make the decisions that we're here and paid to do. Nobody's asking for these things to go in the Stornoway Gazette. I honestly think that these people objecting to these things are sending these letters to me as a councillor in that ward, and I should be allowed to see it. It's very important. I've spoken with many residents in that area. I know this. I know it, as does Gordon and the other councillors in that area. why can we not have 100%? Why have people seen this and the other half not? It's not right. Sorry. Thank you for your time and your indulgence.
Thank you, Councillor McConnell. I've also visited Assay Place with Councillor Gordon Murray, but maybe you can answer these. I thought you had answered them before, Chief Executive, but I'll ask you to explain it again.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a matter of consent here. It's not about members knowing one thing or some members knowing another. It's simply that in order to publish anything, and publish means make available beyond the legal duty, we haven't asked their consent. If we think we should ask their consent, then that's exactly the kind of issue you should consider when looking at a report on changing our procedures. That's all it is. Individuals are, of course, free to go to elected members and make themselves known. That's not a problem either, and many will do that. Rather than make representations through the official process, they may make them directly to members, and that's absolutely fine. But I think the division of opinion in the committee shows that it's worth a report, and not just for road traffic orders, probably for other similar statutory material as well. I'm thinking of the Civic Government Act objections and matters like that. It's probably time for a look at that in any case, because some of it will not have been updated, and that includes Scottish Government to take account of GDPR.
Thank you, Chief Executive. So if we get a report back for the June series, then would that be possible?
Yes, I mean, I'm committing colleagues, but I don't see why not.
Would the committee be happy with that?
Chair, I should have said the report will not be just for this committee. It will probably be for policy and resources if it applies to more than one procedure. But we'll let you know about that as it goes along.
Okay, thank you, Chief Executive. Well, I'm happy to go with that if the Vice Chair is.
Yes, Chair, I am.
Yeah. Now, I don't know what we do with this minute now, Machine. It was for approval, and we've had about 45 minutes discussion on it.
Did I get?
Yeah.
In regard to on the back of item 4.
Okay, thank you. Can we move on to item 2, which is the minute of meeting of 23rd February 2021. This is the minute of the budget setting meeting, your approval. Arising from approval of the budget, it was agreed that a number of reports come back to the committee, and Stornoway Abattoir and Concessionary Fares, which is incorporated into the transport update item, are included on today's agenda. Are we happy to approve? Yep. Item 3, minute of meeting of Northern Roads Collaboration Joint Committee of 27th November 2020, and that's for noting. Are we happy to note? Yes. Minute of meeting of Highton's of 5th February 2021 is for noting, but there was a meeting on Monday with the Highton's board in relation to STPR2, and that can be picked up at item number 8. 5, declaration of interest. Members are asked to declare any interest they have in any items of the agenda. It would be helpful if members expressed why they are declaring an interest in the item concerned. Please do so now using the raise hand function. No, okay. Please ensure the declaration is repeated prior to the relevant item and you adhere to the protocol as previously indicated. Move on to performance management. Performance management 2020-2021, quarter 3, property and infrastructure. This report provides an overview of the property and infrastructure. Callum Mackenzie will speak to the report and answer any questions. Thank you, Callum.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just give a summary on the financial side of things. The winter maintenance, for which there's a report following later on the agenda, we're currently looking at an oversight estimate about 450 to 500,000. We're looking at an overspend on property repairs of about 100,000, just an additional large in nature. 100,000 on project delivery, the Creed turbine. So as you know, as a result of the interconnector problems, we've had to ramp down our production and therefore our income generation from that turbine. I'll just add another bit that's just come in to me yesterday, and it's in relation to parking on pavements and the Transport Scotland Act implementation. The council has received some funding towards assessment required for making exemptions to parking on pavements. We haven't had any guidance or any timescales confirmed yet for that, but I'd hope to be able to report that to further meetings of the committee. And I'm happy to take any questions, many other aspects of the report, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Colin. Does anybody have any questions for Colin on this report? No? No? Okay, thank you. Do members agree the recommendation in 3.1? Yes, okay. Move on to item 7. This report provides an overview of the community's Directorate business plan progress and related performance for Q3. The area of relevance to this committee is the municipal services at section 8 of the report. David MacLeod will speak to the report and answer any questions. David?
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, it's municipal services. That's the area. In paragraph 8, we have some information relating to the service provision over the period. I think our biggest challenge has been maintaining services during the COVID pandemic, but we have managed to maintain waste and recycling collection services more or less as normal. We have had some disruption to bus services, but it is now back to normal. In terms of the financial performance, the significant reduction in income areas have been the income from waste collection and disposal and bus income from passenger numbers on bus Comhairle services. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Does anybody have any questions for David? Councillor Colin McLean.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not on your committee. Can I ask David if in the aftermath of the COVID scare, if all our employees are getting test and trace, especially testing, are you testing all your employees, say, as most are twice a week, self-testing I'm on about, David? That is all our employees, particularly those in the municipal services, for instance, in the cleansing and in the bus stay.
David?
At the moment, we're following NHS guidance on that. We have included the bus drivers in the testing regime that's going to be rolled out for education services staff because of their crossover into school transport. But at this stage, there is no requirement for testing of any of our other staff unless they're called in for track and trace through the NHS service.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, David. The convener.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask David. I believe that Dr. Mackay's have gone over to you today to remove the whale that came ashore on the beach there some 10 days ago. And I just wonder, I've spoken to Kenny MacLeod about it. We've had conversations about it, and I recognise that there is a significant cost associated with that. I don't know if you're in a position to estimate what that cost would be. Even it's going to be even challenging for them with two fairly large diggers, given it's more than 15 metres long and weighs just about 30 tonnes or so. Yeah. So it's and the end disposal will be at Benadrove, as I understand it, from what Kenny MacLeod said. And can you comment on that, David, please?
I don't have any figures at this time. It really depends on how much work is involved in actually getting it off the shore. In terms of the disposal costs, obviously, as a ballpark figure, it's roughly £150 a tonne, slightly less than that for disposal, and particularly for landfill tax. Landfill tax is under £100 a tonne, so it's 30 tonnes. It's quite a cost just in landfill tax. Historically, there used to be a scheme where all of the costs could be claimed from central government. It's no longer so easy to do that, but we will look to see whether we can recover costs.
Yeah, thanks, David. I remember when I worked for the council, you were able to recover costs. That's way back, of course. Norman?
Yes, thanks. Thanks to David for that information, and I do think we should try and recover at least some of our costs from the Scottish Government, given that it's not something anybody can do anything about. Once they come ashore, we have to dispose of them safely and responsibly. Thank you.
Okay, convener. Councillor Johnny McKeever.
Thank you, Chair. As we mentioned, the refuse collection there, I think it's only right that we commend them for the service that they have provided during this pandemic. They have kept going throughout it all. I know it's right to acknowledge our emergency services and our health service and the carers and everything, but I think they also deserve a huge mention.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor McKeever, and I'm sure David will pass that on.
Yes,
David?
thank you, Chair. I will do.
Yeah. Anybody else? You've still got your hand up, Councillor McKeever.
Sorry.
Yeah. Councillor Colin McLean.
Yeah, so the other thing I was going to bring up, it's topical, Chair. Again, I'm not on your committee, but I don't know if this is to take it up, is the Benadrove landfill site. The problems that were out there on account of bad weather. And I know that your staff were in there very quickly because I've got correspondence with Ian Norman Campbell about that, and just asking. But there's been a bit of furore on social media by some individuals. But anyway, that's to be expected in one sense. But has the cleanup gone on, and has it been done successfully?
I think so, Colin. I mean, David alerted me to this in our meeting on Monday morning, and I think that's been done. You should ignore social media, Councillor McLean. David, do you want to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We did the initial clean-up of material that was attached to fences very quickly last week. We are doing a bit of further work this week just to check all the ditches are clear. It is something that we have to do at the end of each winter season. It's been particularly difficult this year because our netting system supplier, we usually get them up to do some repairs after the winter. All their staff are currently on furlough, so we have no access to Huck Tech netting system staff to come up and replace panels or provide us with replacement panels. But we will take every measure to remove all of the windblown materials. We are coming to the end of the current cell, and it is quite high, so it is something that we will keep an eye on until we move into the next cell.
Okay, Councillor McLean, I'll let you back in.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I am not on social media, either on Facebook or on Twitter or any of these things. I'm gladly so, but it's that they've been referred to me by conversation or by telephone, that these platforms. But it's just that I'm just saying, but I did know that this was through word of mouth, and that I did know. I went directly to David, who was off at the time, but Norman quickly came in on it, as did others, and I can say to them, well done for how quickly they managed to alleviate that situation. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. Councillor MacDonald, Norman MacDonald.
Thanks, Chair. Again, I'm not a member of your committee. Bob Dylan once famously said, you don't need to be a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. But I think ignoring social media, whilst a lot of people seem to think that they can dictate and the Comhairle will be listening policy based on what they comment on Facebook, etc., rather than going through their councillors, which is something that we brought up at the very beginning of this meeting, everybody should speak to their councillors if they're wanting something changed by the Comhairle. You know, I think their first port of call should be their actual councillor and not Facebook. But I think it behoves us to keep an eye on what's trending out there as well. It's a particularly nasty tool for people with an agenda. I know that, and I'm guilty myself of reacting to quite a lot of what goes on. But there's quite a lot of debate goes on out there, and people encourage us to interact with it. So I think interacting with people is important, whether it be Facebook. Personally, I would prefer people to actually come up and speak to me, email me, tell us, etc. But we live in a changing world, and whether we like it or not, social media plays part of it. Not always for good, I hasten to add, but we should, I think, encourage people to interact with their council. The first point, if they're wanting something done.
You break the internet.
So, insofar as this committee's interest is concerned, the members. Oh, Mr. Crichton, did you have something?
Just a query about the recycling centre and with the hopeful reduction in restrictions. I'm wondering, are there any plans to a system for on my own part anyway, but are there any plans to reduce that now or to remove it in the near future?
David?
Thank you, Chair. We will review once we've come out of the lockdown restrictions that we have just now. We will review both the positive and negative aspects of the system. I think in terms of a tool to communicate with the site and with the producers of waste, it has actually helped remove potential confrontation with staff, because people know they have to book in if it's significant quantities, whether that waste is suitable for the household waste recycling centre or whether it should be taken direct to Benadryl. So it has removed that potential area of conflict and made it a lot clearer. So there has been positive and negatives. I think it is a wee bit of a hassle, but I think the general consensus now is that people understand the system. It is something that's in place in just about every local authority in Scotland now. Some of them had it in before COVID, but certainly at the moment we're amongst the least restrictive going. And I think, as I said, we will review it. And I mean, I'm happy to look after the summer, bringing a report back to say this is how it's worked, and these are the good sides of it, and these are maybe the things that we could maybe tweak.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'd welcome a future report, and I think that this booking system might be more relevant to the commercial users, perhaps, but that's something that you can perhaps look at in the future report. Thank you.
Chair, if I could just say that one of the reasons why the booking system hasn't worked quite well is that there is often a lack of understanding of the difference between what is chargeable waste and what isn't. And it could be a member of the public bringing in what is effectively industrial waste that should be chargeable, and this system allows that to be disposed of in the correct location. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Charlie Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to bring up a point which I brought up at Communities and Housing yesterday, and was indicated that it should come to this committee, Chair, and I'm not a member of the committee. In addition to the community skip, quite a few of the community skips are breaking, and there's no money available to the department to buy more at present. And I suggested at Communities and Housing yesterday that they would look at making money available from councillors' expenses to help David and Ian in regards to buying more community skips because it's a service that's needed throughout the islands as such. And I want to bring it to committee attention and for you, Chair, and the Vice Chair, in conjunction with the Chief Executive and the Leader, to see if finance can be made available to Mr MacLeod's department to replace community skips that are not fit for purpose now, Chair.
Can you comment on that, David, in terms of community skips? Are there a lot past their sell-by date now? They're an important asset, of course.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We are at the stage where a number of them are heading towards end of life. We have in the past had facility to do maybe a bit more repairs than we have now, but that's not often cost effective. But under normal circumstances, we'd be looking to include it in the next round of capital programme. But we will have a look and see whether there's anything we can do short term. We're certainly looking at any underspends in the service going forward that we would buy a few skips.
Right, so we can have a discussion on this Monday morning if possible. It is an important asset in communities, David. Yeah,
happy to do that.
Okay, Councillor Nicholson, we'll follow that one up.
Thank you, Chair. Just be aware that the Chief Executive and the Director, Calamian McKeever, indicated that they would go away and see if the saving in the counter's expenses could be brought over to help Mr MacLeod and the department there in replacement of community skips. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Kenny John MacLeod.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to go back to access to the CA site at Creed, and I would support what Councillor Crichton was saying there. I think it is important to make it as accessible as possible. It is a fully manned site, and if people from well out with the Stornoway area are willing to take trailers in to the centre there, it does alleviate pressure on the local community skips. And I think with the vagaries of the weather, it is sometimes quite difficult to plan ahead, and perhaps people do at short notice, subject to suitable weather, do want to go in, and maybe that's a disincentive. So I think it would be good to look at it again and whether it would be possible to revert back to the way it was. But obviously taking account of all the lessons and benefits learned as well. So perhaps if it is going to be looked at again, I would certainly be sympathetic to it being not as restricted, since people from quite a distance away from Stornoway, if they're willing to take the waste in rather than put it into the local community skip, it does help the service in that respect as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paul Finnegan.
Thanks, Chair. Not a member of your committee. I just want to support what Councillor Nicholson has been saying. In Harris at the recycling plant, there's been quite a lot of issues with skips in being able to resupply with skips, and I think it's quite important that we really support David and the team and try and find some money somewhere to actually get some newer ones, some new replacements. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Finnegan. Anybody else? Councillor MacLeod and Finnegan, you've still got your hands up. Okay, thank you for that, David. Insofar as the committee's interests are concerned, do members agree the recommendation in 3.1? Yes, okay, thank you. Item 8, strategic project. In 2019, the Transport Scotland commenced the second strategic transport projects review to help inform transport investment in Scotland for the next 20 years. It has been a long process, and I wish to commend both Angus Murray and Linda Cunningham for their work over this period and for the report and the response to the consultation. The report was considered by the Member Officer Working Group on 10th March, and given the level of concern that several island travel priorities have already been scoped out, some of which represent the strategic objectives of the Comhairle, it is recommended that the Comhairle submit a robust response and also seek a meeting with the Cabinet Secretary, currently Michael Matheson, so we're not quite sure who it'll be after the election, of course, and raise out concerns around the STPR2 process. Now, Angus Murray will speak to the report and answer any questions, and the report will also be considered next week at Policy and Resources Committee. Angus Murray, if you want to talk to the report.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. I don't really have a lot to add to that. It was given a good hearing at the TNI MOG. I mean, there are key concerns among Highlands and Islands stakeholders, so not just ourselves. And we had a meeting with Hightrans on Monday where we went through Highlands' proposed response, and it looks like they also are going to write to the Cabinet Secretary. I'm not sure about the practicalities of doing that. Would that be after the election? Bearing in mind that this is going to the PNR on the 31st and the deadline for the consultation is the 31st.
Yeah, well,
I'm not entirely sure about the practicalities of that.
Well, neither am I, if you don't know.
No. Okay, I'm just talking about in terms of the lead up to the elections and so forth. So I don't know the minutiae of that. But anyway, the key paragraph here is that 2.3. There's been a sifting out process which hasn't been the most transparent, and the methodology behind it is, you know, there's quite a lot of paperwork attached to this report, to the various links, and I do say the methodology is hidden in there somewhere, but quite a lot of our travel priorities have been scoped out in paragraph 2.3, such as aviation, RET, Inter-Island Fixed Link, digital connectivity, and roads as well. I mean, roads can only be, you know, funded under certain circumstances, I think. But anyway, we'll see how that goes. But the responses at Appendix 1, and in general terms, I think it outlines what we would look to have. We're looking for better coordination between STPR2, the Islands Connectivity Plan, because there's some indication that the things that don't go through STPR2, they go through the Islands Connectivity Plan. But that's just a stock answer from the consultants and Transport Scotland at the moment. The Islands Connectivity Plan is some 2 years away on present projection. But we would like to see more involvement and more participation in some of these plans, the National Islands Plan, the Islands Connectivity Plan, and you know, we haven't given up on STPR2 in terms of returning some of our own priorities. But yeah, it's actually very difficult. It has been difficult in some instances dealing with the Islands team on the National Islands Plan, because we haven't been included in their implementation roadmap, and they've held several workshops, none of which, you know, we were local authority. There was no local authority involvement in any of these workshops. So the chief executives are meeting today with the Island Strategy Group. So I mean, I dare say some of these issues might get raised by all the local authorities. So that's it, Chair, really. If anybody wants any changes to the proposed response, then we can incorporate them.
Okay, I've got a number of hands up, Angus, so make sure you hang about. Colin McMillan, Councillor Colin McMillan. Colin?
Yes, can you hear me, Chairman?
I'm hearing you. I hope you left the dog outside today, Colin.
Oh, I did. He's in the other room. Yes.
Okay.
He was specifically put out.
Is he in the doghouse?
No, I'm frequently there, but he's in his kennel.
Right, Colin.
Well, first of all, I would have to thank Councillor MacLeod for allowing me to attend the MOG on the 10th of March. And apologies to Angus for not getting back to him in the meantime. I was otherwise employed, and then things happened. From a political point of view, I feel that we're missing the point here a bit, because the STPR is a project-based approach to the NTS, National Transport Strategy. They feed into one another, but the National Transport Strategy is the overarching thing. And I think it was 6.6.1 in the report where it quite rightly says that the projects were sifted out. Now, I've had a fair bit of toing and froing with Transport Scotland as well on this. And I think it's item 10.1 where we go slightly off track. The response that you've made there, Chair, to Transport Scotland, it looks at it purely from our perspective about the spinal route not being a major road. But at the same time, you have island to island fixed links. And if you look at item 2331 in Appendix 2, the other one where I was working on was item 2301 from memory. It's moving Mallaig from the mainland port out of Mallaig Harbour, which is an absolute bust, to Loch Nevis, which is sheltered from all winds, and make that a bit like Cairnryan. And what Transport Scotland are looking for is which are the projects that we would support so that they can get Baptiste to have a look at them from a technical perspective, so that from the technical viability that Baptiste, they're not called Baptiste now, they're called Jacobs, sorry, so that when the Baptiste engineers look, or the Jacobs engineers look at these projects that we are recommending as their priority for a strategic point of view, some of these that are in the list have a degree of operationality in them, and we would have to look at sifting them out. But the ones that are strategic, so that in the year 2042, we can look back and say, yes, these were commenced in 2021 or 2020, and they then got into the ground and into the feasibility studies. People think that, 20 years ahead, we can't see that. But we all remember the year 2000, which is 21 years ago. It's not that far away looking backwards, and similarly looking forwards from 2042, when we look back to 2021, it will be quite close. So that's where we have to go with this, Chairman. Your letter, I accept what you say, that the road transport in the islands, which they say is our responsibility, and which has been sifted out of the strategic projects. But if we look at the ones that are in the list, and then from our point of view, we remove the ones which have a degree of operationality on a day-to-day, and look at the ones which have a strategic impact. And that's what they're looking for us as a council to support. Which projects do we see as having a strategic importance and will be a game changer over 20 years? I'm sure Angus has been dealing with the likes of John Jayek and Alistair, oh goodness, what's Alistair's name at Transport Scotland. And it's to Transport Scotland that this response would go on the projects for the 31st, not to the ministerial or the political side. That's my reading of it, but I could be wrong. I would take Angus's advice on that. So, but that's where I see that your letter, Chair, is slightly off the mark, and that we have to refocus where we take it, so that we look at the sifted out projects as the report says, and I think 10.1 in the report is not quite on the mark from a political point of view. and that we have to look at the report itself, and also the response would have to be completely redrafted. I've done it for you if you want one. But,
well, yes, but after the member officer working group, you promised to put all this in writing, Colin, which you haven't done.
I did.
You know,
I did. I've written it up, but I haven't actually managed to do it. So apologies to Angus and yourself, and to Kenny for that. But certainly it's something that if we could have a look at the response to Transport Scotland for the 31st, so that we look at these projects, and from my particular point of view, the fixed link to Skye and moving the Malik terminal to Loch Nevis, that would be the two ones that would make a huge difference to the islands and to Uist as well. So thank you for that. Thank you,
talking about ferry ports, Colin, we've been struggling in North Uist for 20 years to move from Oog to Dunvegan. So it's not an easy task, but I take your point on a number of these issues, and I'm sure I'll have a discussion with Angus afterwards. I'm going to let in Angus McCormick, I think it is next, then also MacLeod. Angus.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. I must admit, staggered when I read this report, and it just seems to be excluding from immediate consideration all of the major issues, which you have been pursuing yourself over the whole of this period of this council, and it's almost as if they're drawing a line through quite a number of them, which I think is not the right way to go about things. I would disagree with Councillor Macmillan. I don't think we should be taking anything out of it. If we wish to add some things in that he has suggested, I would be very happy with that. I was quite staggered when I read the report. I thought this is just incredible. It's almost as if they're pulling down a blind on the Outer Hebrides, which is not at all what we want. I wondered, Chair, if Angus, when he responds within the committee, has he had a flavour back from government officials on any discussions they might have had with this? What is their reasoning? Why are they excluding all of these matters which are so important to the Outer Hebrides? Thank you.
I'll let Angus respond, Angus, but it's quite clear that the only people that are happy with this are the ones in Edinburgh and Glasgow, really. But Angus, do you want to respond to Angus?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, the response would be going to Amy Phillips, who's the Transport Scotland lead on SDPR2, but they work with the consultant Jacobs. But the recommendation following the MOG was that we also seek a meeting with the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, Infrastructure and Connectivity. So there's a timeline of that I'm not sure of, but the deadline for the consultation is the 31st of March. Yes, we've asked about the methodology, and there is no doubt the methodology is hidden somewhere, and some of the heavy tomes that are appended to this report. It's very difficult to find some of the information at times, but this hasn't really gone down well with the Highlands and Islands stakeholders, albeit some of the more urban-based local authorities are less concerned than the islands authorities, for example, and also some of the remoter rural areas. But what they have said to us, and we've asked this question several times, we've asked about island communities impact assessment, which was a completely foreign concept to the consultants. One of the workshops that was held in Stornoway, and we've also been told, well, some of the projects that are being sifted out of STPR2 in terms of islands, could possibly be incorporated in the Islands Connectivity Plan. But both of these processes are not running in tandem. They're not running in parallel with each other. So it's a very sketchy, vague answer as to what might be included in the Islands Connectivity Plan. And we've also independently seeking greater participation with Transport Scotland in that process as it moves on.
Okay, I'll let Alison MacLeod. He's been waiting for a while. Councillor MacLeod.
The Roars are very patient people. Anyway, on a more serious note, I would like to commend Angus and Linda for compiling this robust response. It's hugely important, I think, in principle, and we don't ignore any strategic consultation, and this is what it is. And I, like Angus McCormick, was quite disappointed and quite surprised at the things that were left out in the scoping exercise. If we don't respond in a robust way, the assumption will be from Central Belt that we're just not interested. And I commend the officers for doing this. One that just questioned, Angus, I'm wondering if Shetland and Orkney were treated in the same way. Are you aware of their concerns in regard to this consultation? Thank you.
I think they're basically the same. I've seen the Orkney, but I'll let Angus come back.
Yeah, thanks. Orkney have already submitted a response because their schedule of council meetings didn't quite fit with the timelines. But we've already seen that response, and it's in the public domain, so we could share it if Councillor MacLeod is interested in that, or indeed any other councillor. But yeah, generally speaking, as a council, we respond to numerous consultations, strategic and otherwise, and this is no exception. We did contact Shetland and Orkney Island councils to see whether they would be interested in a joint meeting with the Cabinet Secretary. Now, the response from Shetland was not especially effusive, and I don't think we received a response from Orkney, actually. But at the High Trans meeting on the Monday of this week, Shetland and Orkney basically shared their own concerns about a whole range of issues, including the sifting out of some of these projects. So pretty similar. I mean, there's a consensus among the regional stakeholders about this piece of work. And the question, I suppose, is it irretrievable or isn't it?
Thank you, Angus. You might as well share the Orkney response with members then of the committee.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll do that.
Aye, Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to come back. I mean, I really am very troubled at the way in which island communities seem to be being abandoned by the Scottish Government. It's not just this document, but there's been quite a bit. I mean, our own day-to-day funding has just about disappeared altogether. And I just don't understand why this is happening. I wish I could get somebody in the Scottish Government to explain this to me. I recall in my early days on the council how the spinal route was one of our #1 priorities, and when we considered it to be an absolutely imperative strategic development that we would do something about every year, and that's just disappeared. We're not able to do anything like that again. So we really have to get the message across to the Scottish Government that they are not treating us at all fairly, and that they really have to help us to carry out all these basic and fundamental things that you have been pursuing yourself as the chair of the committee for all these years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCormick. I've got Councillor Kenny John MacLeod, then Councillor Crichton. Kenny John.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, I share concerns of many colleagues, and not the member of the working group who did express concern about the sifted out elements. And really, all of these things are so critical to and of strategic importance in an island context. And I know we had some discussion online and offline on fixed links, and Councillor Macmillan was quite keen that we look at that. But I wouldn't want that to nail our colours to the mast just with one future potential like that at the cost of sifting out all of these critical things to our connectivity and survivability. And it's absolutely true that the spinal route, which was substantially contributed to by EU funding, it wasn't down to support entirely from our own government or governments that was successful. And it is unfortunate that seems to have been stymied now through starvation of funding. So I think it is right that we express our concern in very robust terms about the sifting out of this, and it is absolutely contrary to the Islands Act that we be not given consideration about the impact of these things in a particular island context. So, and of course, our Northern Isles colleagues have been able to buffer a lot of these things with their own substantial funding that they have retained from the royal revenues, of course, as well. So we are in a relatively unique situation that we don't have the luxury of these buffers. So I'd be keen that we be as robust as possible in expressing concern that we've been about the sifted out items, and that does have a significant impact in our island context. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor MacLeod. Councillor Donald Crichton.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not a member of your committee. I think Mr. MacLeod has said what I was going to try and say myself. In terms of the attitude of Transport Scotland, it's appalling, and I think we have to take it to the highest levels in terms of the Cabinet Secretary, and again remind them of the legislation that is in their name, the Islands Act and island proofing. That card needs to be used time and time again in our context. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crichton. Convener.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would certainly agree with what's been said over the last 10 minutes or so in terms of this particular item, and it really is quite worrying that things are going to be out of kilter, because what we would want is to do several things at the one time to make sure that we have something that is comprehensive and it makes sense for us. And the European funding in the past has been absolutely critical to that. And we're hearing nothing from government, either in Westminster or in Holyrood, about how these European funds are going to support the most peripheral parts of Europe, far less the UK. And we have to be really robust about the messages we send out to government. And there is a good opportunity over the next few weeks to prize something out from the election process. And I think we should be as individuals and maybe lobbying our MPs and MSPs just to make sure that they realise that we're still here, and we do have these acts of parliament now that support our position, and they need to take cognizance of that.
Thank you, Convener. Councillor Colin McLean.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Again, I'm not a member of your committee, but I support what the patient Councillor MacLeod from Point has already said, and reiterated by Councillor Crichton. And I do share what Angus McCormack has said, that we do seem to have over the past decade or more been lost by the Scottish Government. We don't seem, there doesn't seem, and this report bears that out. May I commend Angus Murray for your own work on this and this documentation here. To a layman's terms, it gives me a little flavour of it. I'm not saying I can understand it all, but certainly you're working on it, you're questioning what they're doing, and that is good. What you said there, is it irretrievable? Is it retrievable? That is a very good question. That is why, as we already heard, we have to put pressure on the likes of our representatives in government, whether it's in Scottish Government in particular, and actually say something has to be done. When I read this through, we are being left behind, and this should not be. And your own your own letter, Councillor Robertson, which I've read, is very good and brings up these problems. And we have to continue with this because we cannot be left behind.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. Do you want to come back on this, Angus? And you'll be aware of the thanks there that's being expressed to yourself and Linda, have done a huge amount of work on this over the past while. So,
yes,
and I know you spent the weekend finalising it.
No, I personally would like to acknowledge the work that Linda's put into this report, and there's a lot of paperwork associated with this process over a year, in fact. The only thing I would mention is that in terms of European funding, there's been recent announcements by UK government about the replacement of EU funds in effect. So there's going to be a community renewal fund, which is a pilot for the shared prosperity fund, and it's a revenue fund. And there's also going to be a levelling up fund, which is a capital fund. So it may be possible to source funding from either of these schemes, but certainly in terms of the levelling up fund, these are capital schemes, and on the face of it, it would look as if roads to communities, for example, would be an eligible bid. So that we've got our reports going up to policy and resources on these funds. So no doubt you'll see them in due course.
Is that next week?
It's the 31st of.
Yeah. Wow.
It's the 31st of March, PNR.
Okay.
Yeah.
Convener.
Thank you. Just very briefly, picking up on what Angus said there, there is no doubt that we have to keep pushing this issue because undoubtedly the UK government will be looking to replace some of that funding. But what we need to be clear about is that funding should be going to the most peripheral areas in the UK and not be spread widely across England, and Scotland for that matter as well, in terms of the central belt. So we need to make sure that they recognise that for it to be a true addition to our budgets, that is something that they have to manage, and they have to manage it in a way that supports the projects that we want to take forward.
Okay, thank you, Convener. Are you happy enough with the responses there, Angus, and any amendments you need to make before next Wednesday?
Yes, I'll take these on board. Yes, thanks.
Okay. Councillor Manford.
Thank you, Chair. Can you just clarify, confirm for me your discussion with your reply to Callum relating to the long-term proposals or suggestions or amendments that he was putting forward? You mentioned you are going to address some of them. Can you give me some indication, please, of how you are going to embrace that?
Have you got these kind of response from Callum noted, Angus, which we're going to discuss later? How would you propose to take that forward, is what I'm saying?
Yes, Councillor McMillan was going to crystallise some of that stuff in an email to me, but there's still time to do that.
Thank you very much. That's appreciated.
Sorry, the postman's arrived at the door. The dog's barking.
Who let the dog out?
It's not Callum's dog at all. If we move on to item 9, which is Harbour Board. The following 2 items are for consideration by the committee in its role as Harbour Board, and I remind you of your responsibility as duty holder for the Comhairle's compliance with the Port Marine Safety Code. So we've got Port Marine Safety Code Compliance 2021. This report seeks agreement to sign off the 2021 MCA Port Marine Safety Code Statement of Compliance, which confirms the Comhairle's compliance for a 3-year period to 2024. I don't know if anybody, Kenny Morrison's here to answer any questions. I don't know if you want to add anything to the report, Kenneth, or just take questions.
No, just happy to take questions. Nothing much to add to it. Thanks.
Okay, Kenny. Any questions for Kenny on this report? Anybody? No. Do members agree the recommendation of 3.1? Yeah. Okay, item 10, Port Marine Safety Code and Designated Persons Report. This is a regular monitoring report to the committee and provides an update on the implementation of the action plan arising from the review of the Comhairle's compliance with the Port Marine Safety Code, together with an update on the status of actions outstanding following the Designated Persons Report 2021. Kenny Morrison will speak to the report and answer any questions if anybody's got any questions. Do you have anything to add to the report, Kenny, or just questions?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just one thing. It's in Appendix 1 there, the Harbour Review Action Plan, and number 9 there, and it actually affects our just staffing in general. It's been an ongoing thing trying to get a harbour access agreement with Calmac ferries for our ferry ports, but just to say that I met with them yesterday again, and it seems to that they've brought this forward now, and they've brought somebody that's going to deal with it. So I'm hoping there'll be progress on that, and I'll be able to report at the next meeting what that progress is. But I am hopeful that will move, and then that'll help in the recommendations that are still outstanding on that report. Thank you, Chair. I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Kenneth. Any questions for Kenneth on this item? No. Okay. Do members agree the recommendation of 3.1? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Traffic management, number 11. Spaces for people, 20 mph proposals update. This report was considered at the last series and referred back to the Member Officer Working Group on 10th March for consideration of revised proposals for Stornoway, which exclude the main arterial routes, and the recommendations are before you for your approval. Now, Callum will speak to the report and answer any questions. Callum, have you got anything to add?
Thank you, Chair. Nothing to add really, other than that it has been referred to the Transportation and Infrastructure Strategic MOUG, and the recommendations before you are that as agreed at the MOUG. The proposal for Stornoway have been amended and are available there in Appendix 1 for people to have a look at. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any questions? Angus McCormick.
Hello, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. I did write to yourself and Callum in advance because I wanted to raise just a small issue with you. I'm in general in favour of the principle. Since I became a councillor, one of the roads that has most been brought to my attention in terms of speeding has been Anderson Road. And I notice that the stretch of road, which is outside where we are building the new care home and housing, is suggested for 20 mph. And I just wondered whether it would be possible to consider extending that to include Anderson Road. I think the people of Anderson Road would be very, very pleased if that could happen. I'm not a member of your committee, so obviously I can't make a proposal to that effect, but I just wondered whether yourself and the committee would consider that.
Colin, do you want to?
If the committee are happy for me to amend the plan to that effect, I'm happy to do so. There will be one consideration to take though. If we're going to put Anderson Road to 20 mph for that stretch, then the other roads such as Springfield Road and Goathill coming off that would still be 30. So it might be something we might want to consider in how we manage speed in that area. But if the committee are happy to make that decision, then I'm happy to include that as part of the promotion of the scheme.
Okay, I've got Grant Fulton next. Grant.
Thank you, Chair.
it's also a road issue. I've had a number of representations in regard to the speed limit in various areas of Harris. As everyone's aware, there's been quite a number of significant housing developments, particularly on the west side of Harris. So a number of constituents have approached me, particularly in the area around Sheelabost, going over to Scarista, and looking at possibly reducing the speed limit there. Another area where I've been approached is the area from Tarbert to Ardhassig. Again, there's been quite a number of single houses built there, which obviously have their access directly onto the main road. Both those roads are quite fast, so there's a number of issues with roads access, with cars accessing the main road, and also particularly down Sheelabost area with kids around the area. We also have the Talanamara development around there. So just for consideration, possibly. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Grant. You'll take that on board, Callum, yeah? It doesn't relate to this, I know, but, you know.
Some of these areas have been assessed in the past, Chair, but I'm happy to add them to the list again for reassessment.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that. Councillor Charlie Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair. Not a member of your committee. I would totally support the proposal by Councillor Angus McCormack. It has been a real concern, Anderson Road, and they are looking at the residents and making a petition about the situation there. So this would help if we could introduce this 20-mile-an-hour scheme within that area of Percival Road. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Ray McKenzie.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, I've been cut off from the meeting for the last hour, so I'm just managed to get on the phone. And I think it was Angus McCormack that spoke first. I'd like to support that and what Mr. Nicholson said. In fact, I brought this up yesterday when the Chief of Police was with us at the meeting. And the question of most of the roads affected are sort of south of Mawson Road, but the Anderson Road and Gotill Road, and well, I understand now what Calla and Joari have said about Springfield Road too as a possibility. That there is definitely a major speeding problem there, and yeah, I would go along with having a look at that. And I think Calla says he's going to look into the matter and possibly incorporate that into the whole scheme of things. But there is definitely a speeding problem on these roads, probably more so than on the roads that are actually going to be on 20 mile an hour because of the restrictions in these roads. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor McKenzie. I've got Councillor Callum McLean next.
Yes, Chair, again, I'm not a member of your committee, but seeing Grant Fulton brought up something in Harris, I have to bring up something in Upper Call and down back. I know it isn't related to this, but if he could, Callum, if you could tell me at what stage is the Upper Call Road that has been requested probably for the last 3 to 4 plus 5, 6 years, and there doesn't seem to be any movement on it. And when we see a whole-scale reduction in Stornoway, then the peripheral areas like Upper Call are saying to us, where on earth are we in the whole conversation about reducing trees? And we're only looking from 60 to 40. We're not even wanting 20 mile per hour. Calla, could you tell? It would be good if we could get a report actually. And as I say, I'm not a member of your committee, but even a report to say where you are in requests for the reduction in speed limits. Because the road that I'm talking about has had accidents, a number of accidents every single year. And I'm just pointing that one. So I'm asking you, where are we in the Upper Call Road?
Can you respond to that, Colin? And what's your willingness to do yet another report?
Thank you, Chair. We have a number of requests for changing of speed limits, and these have to go through an assessment process to make sure that the speed limits will be appropriate for the road. There's a whole variety of aspects that are considered within the assessment. I'm happy to take a report back to June on an update of where we are with these. There was a report, I can't remember when I did the last one, Chair. I think it was around about September on an update on these, but I'm happy to do one for June.
Yeah, I mean,
thanks, Carla. Yeah, the only trouble about this is what I'm not criticising you in anything, but this is a recurring theme that I'm hearing from you. That is we've got to go through this process. But I really do think that it's becoming, even with the 2 or 3 accidents we've had this past 6 months, I do honestly think that this one needs to go top of the list. So I'm just putting in that. It's a great opportunity for me trying to get the Upper Call Road into this. So I'm just putting that forward here. But I think residents are getting a wee bit tired of not getting any action.
Sorry, Chair, if I could maybe add there that we do a lot of work with Police Scotland in terms of road safety. We meet with them monthly in terms of operational meetings. We also meet with them strategically, covering the whole of the islands and highlands. So from that perspective, it's not changing the speed limit isn't always the solution, because we try to get down to the root cause of what these accidents are, and they're not always associated with the speeding. So, I mean, I'm happy to take the report back, but in terms of priorities, we do have a number of these to look at.
I've been just walking there last week, and if you had walked with me, you could almost be blown off the road by just walking on the pavement, on the sidewalk.
Well, it's good to see you out walking anyway, Colin.
Thank you, Chair.
I do a lot of walking myself out in the hill. Councillor Kenny John MacLeod.
Thank you, Chair. And first of all,
I think we've lost him. Can we have Councillor Gordon Merry?
Thanks, Chair. I wanted also to bring to Mr. McKenna's attention, which I've done in the past, is the Tongue Road, which is quite a fast road, which has a pavement, and similar to Councillor McLean's problems with cars going past at speeds. We've tried the signs that change and warn, which have been effective, but I think because the signs are moving about, it's not continuous. That might not be helping the problem. So, would it be possible if Mr. Mackenzie could add the Tongue Road from Newmarket to, that street there, to his assessment as well of speed?
Colin, you're getting more than you bargained for at this specific report, I'm afraid. We both
as you know, I mean, these are the issues, because I think every single ward and every single member will have a complaint about speed, and it's about us prioritising and doing what we can about them. And changing the speed limit or putting signage up isn't always the answer. I will take on board Councillor Murray's request for Tongue. We already have done so, and police are already undertaking additional enforcement in these areas. And I would maybe add on the digital signage, it's actually more effective to be moving things around, because when you come against something new, you tend to take more of a reaction to it, whereas you get used to a specific sign being in one place and then start to ignore it. So that's the purpose of having the mobile signs going around the islands.
Right, I've got a number of... Sorry, Gordon, did you want...
I just say it's much appreciated that it's going on the list.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, I've got a number of hands up. If it's about specific areas, can we keep it brief, please? Kenny John MacLeod.
Thank you, Chair. No, thankfully it's not about a specific area. I just wanted to, first of all, express sympathy to Calla trying to distill the wisdom from all the members and put it in a coherent presentation is very, very difficult. And we did have a discussion at the Mound. I just go back to what Councillor McCormick was saying. I certainly have sympathy with what he was saying, extending it slightly there. There is a particular road junction there at Goat Hill Road, I think it is, and Anderson Road, where there's a bollard in the middle of the road, and it is quite difficult. But with the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit now proposed going past the Goat Hill development there, that should I think address that. But obviously coming from the other direction, if it's a 30-mile-an-hour going past the houses on Anderson Road, it's still quite a speed at that point. So I'm broadly supportive of what's proposed to extend it, but I sympathise with trying to tweak and constantly tweak this plan. So my sympathies, but I do see the merit in extending it slightly up to the Anderson Road houses there.
Okay, Councillor John Mackay.
Yes, I've got an area in our ward as well, and that's in Arnold and Braga. I was at a meeting in Braga last night, and they're complaining about. I reported this stretch of road about 10 years ago at least, and there's no speed limit. That's a 60 mile through the villages. So, and the problem now is there's no limit through the villages either, where the houses are closer together. And so I said I would report it. I wasn't going to do it just now, but seeing others are doing it, I thought I would jump on the bandwagon as well. So I want Callum to have a look at it first chance he gets.
Okay, I'm sure Callum will do that, John. Councillor Crichton.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not a member of the committee. I don't want to prolong the discussion any further. Just to highlight what Mr. McLean was saying, that our community council has voiced concerns too regarding these stretches of road. But I think it would be really useful in any future report that not making assessments, but also that we have options in terms of what traffic calming measures solutions could be used. We have had some, and some of them have been successful. But I think looking at those solutions too would be very useful and helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Crichton. Councillor Norman MacDonald.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. Going back to what John was talking about there, I think it was in Arnold Brew and villages. I was always under the impression that where there were street lights, there was a 30 or 40 mile an hour speed limit. I'm not entirely sure if that's correct. Maybe Calla can update us on that. Is there a speed limit where there are street lights, Calla, or is that just a misconception I had from something I may have heard somewhere?
Callum?
It's in the highway code, but basically if the road isn't signposted with a speed limit, if there are street lights, then the recommendation is 30 miles an hour. But in general terms, and enforcement is actually managed by the traffic regulation order and the signage. So in the majority of places in the Western Isles, you actually have a limit. So the 30 or a 40 may not actually coincide with where there are speed limits, but the overriding aspect would be that if it's signposted 40 and there's street lamps there, then the enforcement will be on 40.
Okay, is that clear, Councillor MacDonald?
Clear, yeah.
Okay, Angus McCormick, you've still got your hand up. Do you want to come back in? No. Okay, do members agree the recommendation on 3.1?
Chair, for clarity, you're going to have the recommendation 2 will include Anderson Road to the junction of Springfield.
Oh, yeah.
And in addition, we'd under consideration of this item, there'll be a report back to the tune series on an update on speed limits.
Okay, thank you. With these additions, are member happy with the recommendations? Yes, okay, thank you. Item 12, winter maintenance. TNI Member Officer Working Group in December considered service redesign proposals for winter maintenance and the proposed budget saving of $250,000 from March 2022. The Corps agreed at the last series that the current priorities for the service be maintained for the contract period 2022-2026, subject to annual review by the Member Officer Working Group, and also to develop in-house delivery option as a means of managing costs. The Member Officer Working Group on 10th March considered the option to deliver an in-house service against the current delivery model, and the recommendations are before you at 3.1. This item will also be considered next week by Policy and Resources. Now, Callum will speak to the report and answer any questions, and I'm sure Callum could do this in his sleep now after all the discussions we've had over the last 2 years on this particular one. Callum, do you want anything to add or just want questions on this?
Thank you, Chair. I think the only thing I would add would be that we have considered this at the Transportation Infrastructure MIG a number of times. We have looked at most recently at the delivery mechanisms, but looking at the finances and where we are just now in terms of policy, then the recommendation is, as stated in the report there, that we continue with the current arrangements by extending the current contractual mechanisms we have with contractors over the next 2 years. I'm happy to take further questions on that if you like, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Callum. Any questions on this particular report? Okay, do members agree the recommendation at 3.1? They do. You're getting off lightly with this one today, Callum. I'm sure you're glad. Move on to item 13, Transport Services Update. This report provides an update on transport services and was requested at the budget setting meetings. It also reviews the impacts, costs and benefits of reinstating concessionary fares in the sounds of Barra and Harris. David MacLeod will speak to the report and answer any questions. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you, Chair. This report, as you said, it provides an update on transport services. Looking at bus contracts, we have the Euston Barra school bus contracts being prepared just now to go out to tender. They will include an operator design element, more so this time than the last time round, to see whether that allows a bit of redesign by operators to make the services more efficient in terms of cost. We have been in negotiation with Loganair for an extension of the inter-island service between Benbecula and Stornoway. The current contract is due for renewal, but because of COVID, it was considered that a tender at this moment would not provide a representative service cost and would be likely to be extremely expensive. Loganair concluded with that assessment. We are basically on an extension at the moment. Currently, the Skeleton Air Service that was supported by Scottish Government is ongoing, I think, now until the end of June, although I haven't had that officially, but that's my understanding. And in that time, we will just continue discussing with Loganair to agree an extension so that we can go out to tender next year when things have settled down in terms of COVID-19. COVID-19 has also delayed the review of community transport. We had intended to do a lot more survey work with passengers, but at the moment there's not really much that we can do with that until things go back more to normal travel. The report also looks at reinstatement of the concessionary fare service for the Sounds of Barra and the Sounds of Harris. I have had discussions with CalMac since writing the report, and they have said that in terms of data, they can give us information where the passengers are coming from for pre-booked tickets, but not for tickets that are bought on the day. They won't be able to provide us with that level of information I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
I mean, on Loganair, David, I've had obviously it in writing from Transport Scotland, and I've passed that on to the Chief Executive, you know, that the skeleton air service is continuing at the end of June. And we have to thank the Scottish Government for picking up that particular tab, I have to say.
Thank you, Chair.
Any questions from anybody for David on any of these items? No. Do members agree with recommendation at 3.1?
Chair.
Yes, Colin.
Sorry, Chair, for coming.
You have to be quick on the button.
Yes, I'm really. It's just a question to yourself. I see that this is a transport update, but I see nothing on the agenda about the Stornoway Ullapool ferry or the ferries, the booking systems on the ferry, because I've had just last night, an individual phoning me saying that they couldn't get a booking home in July. And I see nothing in the agenda about ferry bookings or anything. We're now into March. The next meeting is in June. And are we prepared for the booking system being full up for people not being able to get home or away from the island? I'm just saying, is this a relevant place to take it up, or when can we take it up? Maybe David's not the man to do it. He's got enough on his plate, but maybe I could just throw it onto your plate, Chair.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mayashina sent something round this morning in terms of bookings for the summer column for June, July and August. We do try and monitor what's happening with bookings, you know, on a weekly basis with CalMac, and I've had some correspondence from people picking up on the fact that they can't get bookings, and then when some people do travel, they find the ferry is more or less empty to a degree. So there are issues there, Colin, which we have a meeting with Transport Scotland. Is it the week after next, Mayashina, I think it is.
Yeah.
So we would want to pick up these points, Colin, at that point.
That's good.
I will follow up on these ones. Yes, they are of concern. Yeah, absolutely guaranteed.
The date was the 10th of July, coming from Ullapool to Stornoway, and they couldn't book it at all. They couldn't get on it. It's full up. But again, I've seen this system as well. You go online and it's full, and when you go on the ferry itself, the ferry is half empty. You're absolutely right. This has been going on for a few years.
I'll certainly pick up on these points, Colin. Yes. Yeah. Okay, I've got Councillor Manford next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm assuming this in relation to 31D is in relation to the better way of taking it forward that was brought in as a response to the amendment requested in the budget setting. It still puzzles me how talking about it was better than applying the funding to actually do it. But that I think it's commendable that 10 out of the 12 members who voted to bring it back were indeed from Lewis and Harris. My questions are, please, on the concessionary for the information in it, the reimbursement rate of 0.7. Can you confirm to me what exactly that is? Just a bit more clarity. And 5.8 in the report, you refer to 40 responses. 27 were generally in agreement of the discontinuation. I'm conscious of the earlier debate of the GDPR, and I'm not wanting to revisit that, you understand. but there'll be no understanding as to what parts of the Western Isles, or indeed the country, those responses were from. So that would be. Can I have, please, your views on that, or your answers to me on that? And if you're able, I'll maybe have a supplementary. Thank you.
Right, David, you want to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The 0.7, it's with concessionary fares, the operators don't get the full amount reimbursed. It's the same with bus services concessionary rates. It's on a 70% of the ticket value that is reimbursed to the operator. I think I'm not sure of the history behind it, but I think it's to do with increased travel expectations of concessionary rates. That's possibly why it's done on that basis. In terms of the details of the responses, I would need to go back and check what information was provided for the 2017 report, but I know that all of the comments were available as an appendix to that report. I don't have it in front of me right now, but I can. It is available.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I noted 2.4 that it's an initial review. Do I presume for that there are further reports coming? I ask that in the context of this was at a budget setting for, I think, the third time. We'll be probably revisiting talking about this next December, running into the budget review again, budget setting again. Is the information likely to be ready for that? But indeed, are we back, because it'll need to allocate funding from somewhere? This will be part of the budget review. This will be part of the budget setting again. If what I'm saying is, if that's the likelihood, then are we spending a lot of officers' time on getting information which, to a large extent, we already have? And finally, in the context of getting the information that you refer to in the responses, perhaps the empowered communities now may consider it would get better and deeper responses going out to seeking responses themselves. Thank you.
David, do you want to respond about anything further?
Thank you, Chair. I think the purpose of this report and the information provided was really to give members an idea of the likely costs of reintroducing concessionary fares and some of there's no real significant hurdles in terms of going ahead with the reintroduction, as far as I'm aware. The main hurdle is the budgetary provision, which we don't currently have. So that funding would have to come from a source that's not currently available to me within municipal services. In terms of looking at engaging with potential users, I mean, I would be happy to look at doing another bit of survey work to see whether whether there has been a change. Is there a significant demand for this? It's not something that we've had much representation other than through the committee process, but we're not necessarily in direct communication with potential users So I would be happy to look at doing that. I would say that in the current COVID situation, with movement significantly reduced across the board, it would be difficult to get a true picture. We know that, for example, bus service passenger numbers are well below 50% of the norm, and I think it's probably safe to say it'll be the same on the ferries.
Yeah, David, it's something we have discussed at community councils in my ward, obviously, in terms of prioritisation, what you prioritise. My recent correspondence on the Sound of Harris particularly has, and as of yesterday again, is in relation to the timetable, being not allowing for a business trip or a hospital trip to Stornoway because, it's constrained during the day, and I have gone back to Carmack on that particular issue, because some people going up have to stay overnight rather than be able to go up in the day and come back. Yes, Colin McMillan. Colin.
Thank you, Chairman. I would commend David for taking this and increasing the concession from 10% that the budget was based on, or the budget amendment proposal was based on, to 20%. And that'd be a wonderful thing to increase traffic across the stretches of water between the various people concerned. So I'm not sure if they've come out yet. Is this going to Policy and Resources next week for approval, or is it simply not so much going into the long grass as going ashore somewhere? And is it possible that we might see it in action this summer to try and stimulate a bit of traffic across the Sounds when restrictions are lifted? So it's a commendation and also a question in the same one.
Mayasheen, does this report come to PNR?
No, it's not going to PNR.
It's not going to PNR, Colin.
Oh, thank you. And is there any opportunity that it might come back to PNR for funding to make it happen? Is that a transportation thing to recommend inclusion in PNR?
It would be transportation, yes.
So I'm not a member of it.
If you wish to reinstate, you would have to identify a budget. David said he hasn't got a budget line for that within his service.
Right, okay. So would that mean either proposing a report to Comhairle to include it? Would that how we would go about that?
Yeah, are you, I mean, David, you referred to, you had know about reinstating the service.
Yeah, yes, Chair. My concern is, in terms of the budget provision, is that previously we did have a budget for this concessionary fare service, for want of a better term. It was given up as a budget saving, and the Comhairle agreed that would be given up as a budget saving back in 2016. So we no longer have that line in our budget for to pay for the cost of reinstating this. We're not in a position, given the current financial constraints that we're all operating under, where we're looking at savings across the board at all times. We don't have 20-odd £1,000 sitting in a line somewhere that we could take off that line and move it into this without additional funding. So we would need to consider where that would come from. As I said, we actually had a budget including admin support of 35,000 that was given up. We could do it for, it would be less than that now, but because of RET. But it's, it is something that I can't just say we'll take 25,000 from somewhere else to fund this. It's not as easy as that.
Well, I'll leave you. I'll let you come back in, Colin, once you cogitate a bit on that. I've got Angus McCormick waiting.
Thank you, Chair, very much. I wondered, before I make a comment in regard to this particular item, I wonder if you would mind if I refer back to the discussion on the 20-mile-an-hour limit and the Anderson Road, addition of Anderson Road into that, which I'm very happy that the committee has accepted. It has been drawn to my attention that that may have suggested Springfield Road as the termination of the 20-mile-an-hour limit. I think it would be more advantageous if it were to go down to the bottom of the road, down to Tolmy Terrace.
Right, I'm not good with street names in Stornoway, I'm afraid, Angus, so I don't know if Callum's still around.
I'm happy with that, Chair.
Thank you very much. And the only other comment I wanted to make in terms of the booking system that CalMac uses, anytime I've attempted to use the booking system to try and get home, Lord only knows when I will get home, it's not been very helpful, I must say. And what I've tended to do is just to phone Stornoway direct, and I find that the people there are extremely helpful.
I'm afraid that's what we recommend to everybody, Angus, is they phone their local port if at all possible.
Yeah.
Councillor Manford.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I note the comments from the director that the funding clearly isn't here to take anything forward. And the point I would make in that regard is, had we not had the very unusual way of submitting budget amendments and redirecting them down to reports to committees, then the voting, I'm sure, was influenced by the fact that it was argued this was a better way to do it. I fail to see how this is a better way when you can't do it because we chose not to apply the funding to it. However, I only put that in our minds as members to be aware of when the next budget setting comes around, because a year doesn't take that long in passing, and it does for people who don't get the concessions that they would expect to get, whether taking buses to the services they're required to take in the Western Isles, they're required to use. But we are where we are, and we learn all the time. Another 10 months, and this will be coming before this, and others will be coming before budget setting again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manford. I've got Councillor Crichton.
Thank you, Chair. I think, I'm not a member of your committee, I think Mr. Manford has made a point there about the budget setting process. Why wasn't this brought up during the budget setting process rather than at a last minute amendment when the budget was set? I mean, all that could have been discussed and the finance perhaps could have been identified at that stage. But in terms of why this was removed from this concessionary fares was removed as a line from the budget some years ago now was because it was determined there was through the consultation process that there was no demand from the public in terms of this being a priority for them. That was certainly the case when this budget line was removed in the first place some years ago. So, and I think there was a commitment at the last budget setting process to look at this again in due course and see if finance can be identified. My recollection is correct.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Crichton. I think Councillor Manford has given me food for thought on his comments there anyway, but Councillor Macmillan?
Thank you, Chairman. in response to, I think there's 20-something comments that were made which wanted to remove the service. With my simple sums, and I like simple sums, there were nearly 12,000 journeys which benefited from the concessionary fare benefit. So I think that in itself should have been the indicator rather than 20 responses which indicated that they weren't happy with the level of support to this service. Now, on a more procedural note, if funding is identified from the various parts in the council's coffers, could this then be put forward to Comhairle in June or even to PNR next week? Because I note from what Malashina said that the agendas hadn't come out, but I suppose that we've missed deadlines and whatnot. So it's a matter of identifying funding so that this could be in place for this summer, hopefully. Would that be a viable option? Thank you, Chairman.
Can you respond to that, Malashina, please?
Going on what we discussed earlier, David, and about you being minded about doing another piece of work on this to look at the demand for it, would it be a better suggestion to come back with another report?
Thank you, Chair. I think that would be the sensible approach if we look to bring a report to June just specifically on this topic. I do have a meeting planned for a programme for this week with Transport Scotland, and there was talk of potentially removing some of the inter-island fares for passengers altogether, which as a means, obviously this was suggested pre-COVID, so whether it's still on the table or not, but that would certainly address this and other passenger ferry travel on the short routes. As I say, I'm not sure how far along that suggestion was taken, or was it just purely a suggestion in the conversation, but I'll certainly find that out. But also it would give us a chance to do a bit more work and also speak to colleagues in finance to see what other sources of funding are available. There are any other budgetary provisions that we could use for this.
We've had discussions with Transport Scotland on this at various meetings, of course, David, and personally I've had no kind of representations about it, but what I'll do between now and then is actually, with my colleagues, raise it at the various community council meetings we attend to see what their views are on this particular issue, and set against other priorities which have been pushed hard by your community council, particularly in reference to causeways and so on. So we just have to do some more work. But I sense the frustrations from Councillor Manford and Councillor Macmillan and others on this. So I think, yes, Councillor Crichton, you have your hand up.
So, sorry, Chair, for coming in. Just to clarify, I wasn't questioning the demand in terms of the usage of the scheme. I was put in the context of where it was in terms of as a priority when the whole range of other budget priorities were put in context with that option. And, our decision was based on the response to that consultation. And that is, again, as I said, I think that was in the previous term of the council. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Crichton. Right, do members agree the recommendations of 3.1?
Agreed.
Yes.
Yeah. 14, Waste Management Update. This report provides an update on waste management services and the recently launched Scottish Government Recycling Initiative Fund, and seeks approval to replace 2 cleansing vehicles through the current asset rental agreements. This report also goes to policy and resources, but in the meantime, David will speak to the report and answer any questions. Do you have a question just now, Ronald, or wait until David's?
No, thank you, Chair. I'll wait after David's spoken. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ronald. David?
Thank you, Chair. as you said, this report gives an update on waste management services. We have really been held back by the COVID-19 situation in terms of rolling out the agreed 3 weekly waste and recycling services, particularly in Lewis and Harris initially. It's the extension of the trials that were carried out in Barvis and moving that really across the whole of the island. But we are looking to start doing that work in April 2021, obviously subject to the COVID restrictions reducing from, we are moving into level 3, but ideally we would like it to be lower than that. But we will start rolling it out as soon as we possibly can. We have 2 vehicles which are due for replacement. Cleansing services vehicles are one of the few that have an agreed service life and schedule of replacement with the asset rental funding in place in the background. So these are 2 vehicles. One is a 2012. We would normally replace split body vehicles after 8 years. That one is 9 years old, and the other one is coming up to, well, it is now, it will be over the 8 years old by the time it's replaced, because there's a 6-month lead time for these vehicles. We've tried to sort of, for want of a better term, sweat these assets as long as we can and keep them going. But if you note in paragraph 5.7, the 2012 vehicle, we lost 135 days of service due to unplanned maintenance, and we've had to take a higher vehicle in. So obviously, that's what we try to avoid. We try to replace them before that happens, and that's what we're looking at the 2003 vehicle to say, well, that one's not done too bad, but we don't want to be in the same situation and end up paying for a higher vehicle. Moving on to the Recycling Initiative Fund, that fund has just been launched. The plans, the expression of interest forms, I had a view of a draft of that yesterday at a Scottish Government meeting. The formal paperwork should be out today, because today is the last day that they have to put that information out. So I'm expecting to have the final version available to me at the end of today. There'll be an 8-week lead time for expressions of interest, followed by a formal, if you meet the criteria. The expression of interest assessment is just to make sure that what you're asking for meets the criteria of the guidance, which will be finalised today in terms of the guidance. But we expect to be able to apply for funding to do the sort of work that we're looking at doing from the previous fund. What it does give you an opportunity for this time is to look at decarbonisation, so things like electric vehicles, both in terms of materials handling and also some electric refuse collection vehicles. At the moment, the only rounds or the routes that are suitable for that are the ones in and around Stornoway. But ideally, we would like to get a zero emissions vehicle running on these routes as soon as possible. Happy to take any questions on the report.
Councillor Ronald Fraser.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, David. As you elaborated upon, I note the mention in the report of the Scottish Government Recycling Initiative Fund. Can I ask firstly, is there an intent on the collier's behalf to use money from this fund in procuring well-needed recycling bins for our communities who presently don't benefit from a curbside recycling service? And secondly, do we have any data as to how many households at present in the Western Isles are still without a full recycling provision?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Happy to answer these questions. Yes, the purchase of additional bins to continue the rollout was part of the original planned application for the previous fund. That was pulled just before we were about to make an application because of the introduction of the deposit return scheme, or the planned introduction of the deposit return scheme, and the implications that had on the code of practice and the recommendations of what kind of services that were to be provided. So this fund will accommodate the purchase of bins for recycling where there aren't any curbside collections, and also we would hope that that would be the argument for the electric vehicle that would allow us to utilise the fleet better for that. The second question was, sorry, Councillor Fraser, what was the second?
The second question was, do you know how many households at present in the islands do not benefit from
yes,
recycling service?
Yeah, we have details of every community that doesn't have the curbside recycling service. I'm happy to provide that to you if you want specific information. It's roughly about 5 routes. It's basically Uig, Bernra, parts of the west side of Lewis down through Callanish, and also areas of South Lochs and some areas of Harris.
Thank you. And finally, so basically, within the next year or 18 months, you can envisage that we'll have a full recycling service from the Portabara.
Yes, that's the plan.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fraser. Councillor Norman MacDonald.
Thanks again, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. Following up on Ronald's line of inquiry there, we had years ago, I believe at a meeting, there was a percentage recycling for the Western Isles, and our numbers were pretty poor in comparison with the rest of Scotland, if not the UK. Can I ask if any progress has been made on that? Are we getting more recycling through the system just now? Plus, do we incur any penalties if we don't move towards? I believe the Scottish Government probably have targets on recycling. I know we're in a unique position being an island, but have we made any progress on that, David? And what are the future plans for bringing that recycling figure up? I remember the percentage was pretty poor. Just wonder how we made any progress.
Thank you, Chair. The recycling figures for the Western Isles are a wee bit skewed because for the last 3 or possibly 4 years, the materials processed at Creed Park on the anaerobic digestion plant, they haven't been counted as recycling, they've been classed as recovery. We have, at the end of last year, achieved the PAS 110 standard for the operation, so that will now be counted as recycling again. It's not really been a change in process, so the material will still be processed in the same way, but it will fall into a different category. So that'll make a significant improvement to our recycling figures going forward. In terms of other means to improve things, the rollout obviously of curbside services to other areas, to get a fully comprehensive service across the board will improve what we collect, because there's no doubt that curbside collections are better used than bring sites, so that should also improve things. A couple of things that are coming on the horizon that are going to be very useful for us. One is the deposit return scheme, which will take materials out of bins, probably from people that don't currently recycle. They will want to take their containers back and get their deposit returned to them, either to themselves or their talk of community schemes where you may be able to help fund your local community groups by donating the deposits. So that's the sort of thing that will definitely help our overall recycling rates. The other thing that's coming on stream in 2023 is what they call extended producer responsibility, which means that all packaging waste producers, if they put packaging waste onto the market, they will be responsible for the funding of collection, treatment, haulage, whatever, of that material, and that money will filter back down to local authorities that will fund the recycling collection services directly. Now, for us, that's a huge benefit, because at the moment we don't make money from recycling. We make small savings in terms of landfill tax, but overall we're really expensive for recycling compared to mainland authorities who literally pick it up from somebody's bin and drop it off at the processor. You know, we have so many steps in between, including the haulage to the mainland, that costs money at each stage. So having that funding source that will come down to local authority level to pay for our recycling collection services in its entirety is the full net cost that should be reimbursed from 2024. That will be a huge benefit to us.
Thanks very much for that, David.
Thanks, David. Very comprehensive response. Councillor Kenny John MacLeod.
Thank you, Chair. No, it's very encouraging to hear that there will be mitigation for the substantial costs in transport of waste from the islands. That has been the killer for us, no matter how well as communities we diverted waste, the cost. But the one thing you said, it's 2024 that is that when the funding will start flowing to local authorities. And does the fact that there was restricted access to markets for the recyclables that were collected, is that still going to potentially be an issue, or will that still be the responsibility of local authorities to find markets for that?
The plan is that this scheme will be introduced. It's a UK-wide scheme. It's not devolved to Scottish Government. The packaging regulations are still UK-based, so this will be UK-wide. It's full net cost. It is regardless of the price achieved at market, albeit the market price of any materials would be deducted from the cost. But for us, that return is often minimal in terms of the cost of getting the materials to market. But it's being introduced in 2023. They expect about 50% target of payout for 2023, with full cost recovery in place for 2024.
Okay, thank you, David. I'm not seeing any other hands up. So insofar as this committee's interests are concerned, the members agree the recommendation of 3.1. Yeah. Okay, item 15, Stornoway Abattoir. This report provides an update on the 2020 operation of Stornoway Abattoir. Subsequent to discussion at the budget setting meeting, it was agreed that report on the condition of the abattoir and any associated maintenance costs be brought back to the committee. And this report seeks agreement to explore the redevelopment of the facility with community involvement. Is Ian Norman going to speak to this, or are you, David?
Thank you, Chair. I'll wait to see if Ian Norman is available. I know he was having technical problems with his Teams. Oh,
there he is. Ian Norman, there you are.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yes, this report is just to provide an update on the performance of the abattoir for the 2020 season just gone by. Against all odds, we were in a position to be able to open the abattoir in August last year. Given the current pandemic we were in, we're able to open. We're in the fortunate position that the abattoir is run and the staffing is provided by cleansing, so we're able to put some staff in prior to the opening to allow us to ensure that machinery and the building was suitable for operation in August. We did have to spend a bit of money, and this we do every year, and the cost associated with repairs and maintenance for last year was circa £12,000. The situation we're in, we did find that we had to we had additional problems with unable to take cash payments, for example, so that did pose additional work for the member staff, so they were having to prepare more invoicing for the customers, and that in turn has delays in payments coming in. But we're looking, as you mentioned, Chair, that we're looking to do a full analysis on the building, the building fabric and machinery, and get a condition report provided to ourselves. We've already spoken to the PMD department, Product Maintenance Department, to have that done. We propose to look at the development of the abattoir moving forward, and possibly have it so it moves from the seasonality of the abattoir and maybe gives it the potential to open on an all year round basis, and that will be done through discussions with things like the abattoir users group and the sheep producers group as well. And we propose to have a meeting with these interested parties, albeit by teams, as we move forward. So that the throughput figures are shown in Appendix 1 of the report, and also our proposed charges going into 2021 in Appendix 2. I'm happy to do any questions.
Okay, Councillor Crichton, you have a question.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not a member of your committee. I welcome the report, and I think I just want to, you'll remember the useful discussion we had at the Crofton JCC about the future of our abattoirs across the islands, and that we were going to pursue a plan for the sustainability of those services through the islands deal and indeed our economic recovery plan, and the food and drink production strand of that plan would look at how we can put these services on a more sustainable footing for the future. So I think that has to be brought into context too, in terms of going forward, and hopefully the users group will play a large part in those discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crichton. I've got Councillor John Norman MacLeod.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. It's good to see the report. It's not too bad. Just a question for Ian Norman with regards to when you come to sort of maintain the machinery before the service goes into use and all that. I'm just asking, are all these costs included in the surplus? You know, like I think it was 18,000 for the year 2020. Does that include all costs, absolutely everything, the 20,000? And I'm seeing now that proposal to put the charges up a wee bit. Yes, I mean, I do. If it's going to stay the abattoir, I'd be quite happy. But what I would like us to do as a core is to put the message out to the Crofton community. And I mean, I know there are user groups, etc. But what I would tend to sort of the people I'd want for us to speak to is the likes of all your grazing committees. Just let them know exactly what our charges are like, how they fare with mainland, because a lot of people don't realise that the mainland is a lot higher than us. So we do have a very reasonably charge rate at the abattoir, just so that people get to know, even in the local newspapers. I mean, a lot of people don't go onto social media. A lot of the Crofton community don't. So we could just do something like that. But thanks for the report again, guys. Thank you.
Okay, John Ian, do you want to come back to John Norman and Councillor Donald Crichton's points?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to address that. The shortfall does include all the additional costs associated with the operation this year. Going back to what I'd mentioned about having staff going in beforehand, just to ensure that the building and the machinery are suitable and to ensure that everything is serviced accordingly. We're trying to reduce any periods of downtime that we do have, so that when we do open, we can maximise the throughput through the door. It's in our best interest to ensure that each and every day we have staff there, we have the throughput coming through, and are able to process without any downtime. However, unfortunately, the nature of the machinery means that we do at times result in some breakdowns. think that the point made is correct, and we should be looking at using any platform we do have to communicate proposals with those who are out with, just like the abattoir users group and the sheep producers group. So we'll definitely take that and move forward with it.
Can I ask you, Ian, if you're involved with the Eilean steel side of, as Donald Crichton mentioned?
No, I'm not.
No, okay. David, do you want to come in at this point and add anything?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We do work with colleagues in the other area of our department, looking at, and there is a parallel, well, not quite parallel, but a report on abattoirs going to sustainable this afternoon. So, you know, Ian's report really is focused on Stornoway Abattoir as an operational centre that is managed and operated by Cleansing Services. There is a bigger picture, which is, you know, how can the operation of an abattoir be best optimised for use by basically the residents of the Western Isles, and that includes the abattoir in North Uist and the one in Barra. That is a wider, bigger picture. There is no doubt in my mind that without an abattoir, it's very difficult to do anything with sheep. You know, the economics are such that you may be able to do something with cattle because the value per animal is such that it may still be worth the while. But for sheep, it would be very, very difficult to operate sheep production without an abattoir. It is difficult because meat production from sheep is very, very short in season locally. We tend to kill from August through to the end of December and not really any other times. So it would need to have some other means of generating throughput. You know, is there potential, for example, for the likes of venison, you know, because that's a slightly different season. We have been in discussion through the user group with pig producers, and they do have potential for some throughput in the spring, but the numbers historically have been very, very small. You know, Ian can probably confirm, but we're talking about, you know, 10s or 20s in total, which is not a viable way to open and close, you know, an abattoir. The other concern I have is that there is no connection between the output of the abattoir and the operation of the abattoir as it is just now, so you can't actually maximise value. So as I said, there is a report going to sustainable which takes a wider view of it, but we are happy to work with any proposal that looks to develop the service further.
Thank you for that, David. There's quite a lot of venison goes through the Lochmaddy slaughterhouse, actually. Councillor Norman MacDonald.
Thanks again, Chair. Again, I'm not a member of your committee. Can I ask, is the non-acceptance of cash, which I would imagine probably have caused a bit of a problem with the way some crofters probably like to operate with a strictly cash scheme. Is the implementation of not accepting cash, is that the COLA directive, or is it just one for the slaughters? And I mean, I know there are additional costs involved, but I mean, I can walk into a supermarket and buy a 50-inch telly, but I have to phone in to Auto Parts to get a Magic 3. So I know the interpretation of COVID regulations is pretty loose. Is it a COLA directive that we don't take cash? You know, I mean, it would be poor to lump additional cost implications onto something that's already struggling.
Right, who's going to answer the cash question?
It was just a decision taken. So thank you, Chair. It was a decision taken at the time to kind of minimise any kind of risk to staff at the time. So we were reducing the amount of movements the staff were going to have to do in interaction with the likes of the banks and so on and so forth. And we had been previously in discussion with the IT department and Capita about putting a card operating system in. Just to bring the abattoir in line with other operating platforms. So at that time, the decision was made just to go forward by looking to see if people were willing to pay with cheque or and moving forward into the 2021 season, that we'd be looking to have more kind of up-to-date systems in place where we could take card payments for people when they're actually booking or collecting their animals from the abattoir itself.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Got Councillor Donald Manford next.
Thank you, Chair. It's heartening to see progress being made on the Stornoway abattoir. Unfortunately, we can't say the same for, I'm not certain about Lochmaddy, although I think the same applies, but certainly the Barrow, the lease has already ceased. It's gone. The council has ceased its support. Not talking about it, it's done. Now, in terms of 6.5, customers from Uist and Barra brought animals to the Stornoway abattoir for processing due to uncertainty surrounding the availability and opening times of their local slaughterhouses. Now, I hope, and also respecting the GDPR, I hope it's not simply an anecdotal response in there. I hope there is some basis to it for inferring very strongly that the Stornoway abattoir is adequate to cover the whole length of the Western Isles. Now, in terms, I did double check the veracity of this information, which I felt was wrong anyway. To be told that their Facebook page, Garramore Farm and Abattoir, operating since 1984, is open all year. And anybody who knows anything to do with its use, you simply phone up and make arrangements for accessing whatever it is you need. Now, for that statement to appear in a council report is not only distressing, it's damaging. So I do hope, and I'll be asking more on it, I do hope there is some veracity to what is in this report. And there is some evidence for it. And it's not, anybody can make an anecdotal comment. That does not give it the status to be in a local authority report.
Okay.
I'll pause at that for now and retain the right, if you please, to come back in. But this is again a victim of a better way of doing things to influence a vote at budget setting. And again, I must pay a very commendable, the Alliance Group, for example, of the 12 that voted that this should have gone through. 10 were from Lewis and Harris, and that is very, very commendable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manford. Do you want to come back on any of that, Ian, Norman, or David, or both?
I'm quite happy to come back directly to Councillor Manford myself following this meeting with regards to the comment at 6.5.
Okay, thank you. John Norman MacLeod, you're wanting back in.
Thanks, Chair. It's going to be very, very brief. It's just to follow on what David MacLeod was saying about pigs, about very few. Well, I've actually spoken to 3 people who do rear pigs themselves. Now, rearing pigs is a lot easier. and rearing lambs and calves, etc., because you can rear pigs all year round. And they would actually rear more pigs if there was to be an abattoir open all year. That's just a point of information. That's all it was. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John Allman. Okay, John McLeod, you've got your hand up. I don't know if that's from the time before, or do you still want in? No, it's disappeared.
No, Chair. No, happy.
Okay. I don't see any more hands up. Do members agree the recommendation at 3.1? Yeah. Item 16 and 17 and the urgent item 19 are in private, so we will move to item 18, which is reports outstanding. That's item 18, reports outstanding. That's for noting. I don't know if any questions on this. So. No? Okay, we'll now conclude the meeting and go into private to consider items 16, 17 and urgent item 19. The relevant officers and members of the committee should remain, and I will ask all other participants to please leave the meeting now.
Yes.